Welcome to the Crime Redefined podcast, produced by Zero Cliff Media. Coming to you from the US Bank Tower, high above downtown Los Angeles. In our podcast, we drill deep into forensics and criminal investigation from the viewpoint of the defense, as well as explore the intersection of the media and the justice system.
Welcome to Crime Redefined. I'm Dion Mitchell here with my co-host, Mehul Anjaria. If you're a return listener, we really appreciate your support. If you're a first-timer, welcome.
Well, listeners, we have a real treat for you today. Joining Crime Redefined is Aleida K, Wahn, who you may know from her legal commentary on Court TV and the Law and Crime Network. Aleida's got a front row seat to some of the most intense trials, and she's here today to take Crime Redefined inside some fascinating cases, Dion.
A little bit more on Aleida. She's an attorney and an award-winning true crime writer. Her book, Judging Winslow Jr., From NFL Star to Serial Rapist, is available on Amazon. We'll be asking her about the Winslow case, of course, as well as a recent disturbing case she's following in San Diego, California, involving some intense stalking, and we mean really intense.
Yes, it's pretty dark. You know, Dion, Aleida's got really a way to expertly navigate this nexus of law and media. And on top of that, she's got a very interesting life story that we'll hear about. I really like her mission in the work that she does, which is, you know, as she does this deep dive coverage into these serious trials, she tries to find the lesson that can be learned, or maybe the law that needs to be addressed or tweaked.
Absolutely. She does a really good job of taking, I guess, probably technical legalese and then regurgitating it out for everybody so everybody can understand it, Mehul. We're really excited to have Aleida on Crime Redefined today and to see what else we can learn from her.
Yeah, I agree. So let's just get to the good stuff.
Welcome to Crime Redefined, Aleida. We're super excited to speak with you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, Aleida, you've had a very interesting journey in life. And if you don't mind, I'd like to have you take us way back to the beginning. Can you talk to us about your early life in Bolivia and how you ended up in the U.S.?
Sure. Yes. So I was born in Bolivia in this little Indian village called San Borja. And my birth mother, was very poor, and she could not afford to take care of me. And so my adoptive parents were missionaries in Bolivia. And my mom had tried to have kids, couldn't have kids, had basically just given up on the idea that they could ever have kids. And they ended up being contacted by the missionary family that was living in that Indian village, contacted back to where my parents were and said, "We have this little girl. She needs a home. Can anybody take her?" And so my parents said, "Oh my goodness, this is a gift from God. You know, we thought we'd never have any kids," and given up on the idea. And yes, we will take her. So I was 2 years old, and I had a lot of medical problems. I was very sick. I had my parents had to just take me to all kinds of specialists in one of the big cities and try to get me well. So that was, they really, truly saved my life.
That's a really amazing story.
Yes. So, they were wonderful. And I just love it. I love that they were missionaries, and they, here they were, they're like, "We're never going to have kids. We've given up." But all of a sudden, here I am.
Yeah, I guess if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, correct?
Yes.
Just curiously, how many languages do you speak?
Well, you know what? This is kind of embarrassing, but I speak I speak English and a little.
We won't tell anybody.
Yes, please don't tell anybody. But no. So I was born in Bolivia, and what I knew up to 2, what do you know? It was Spanish. So what do you know when you're 2? Leche, agua. So. But then my parents were working as missionaries, and they were stationed at this school that was for missionary children. It was a boarding school. So basically, missionaries that would come to all parts of Bolivia would want their children to have a school environment when they went out, literally like into the bush area where there was really nothing. So they would send them to this boarding school. And so my parents worked at that school. So everything there was conducted in English, and you only did learn Spanish or spoke Spanish when you went outside the so-called compound. So anyway, Yes, so Spanish is always on my New Year's resolution. I'm like, oh, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And I've got my Duolingo. I mean, if I could show you right now, I have more Spanish books than, than law books. So anyway, but my son is going to graduate from high school and he wants to go to South America. So it is our goal that we will speak Spanish in 1 year and go to South America.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So now the next part of your life is take us through your journey in the legal field from the end of law school kind of to where you're at today.
Okay, sure. So I graduated from the University of San Diego School of Law. And at the time when I went to law school, I really loved criminal law. And so I did the internships at the San Diego District Attorney's Office in the gang prosecution unit. I did police ride-alongs to gang territory where I had to get down on the squad car because there's people shooting. So I just really loved it. And then when I graduated, I ended up working at the San Diego DA's office in the family support division. And so I worked there. And then I ended up going to a private law firm, a family law firm that did basically high-end divorces. So there's professional athletes, a lot of the Padres, some football players, and then just really successful people. So highly litigated, though, I must say, highly litigated family law cases. And then,
do you want to out anybody? Is there anybody that you want to out, right? Breaking news on Crime Redefined.
Oh, well, you know what? I might get in trouble if I do that.
All right. We won't tell anybody.
But I do have some really good stories.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
What brought you, just curiously though, what brought you to law? Was there something in your family? How did you make the determination you wanted to go to law school?
Well, I had always loved the true crime. And so even in high school, I used to lay out in our hammock and read true crime stories. And I always just loved the whole legal system because the cases that would be presented of how the prosecution said this and the defense said this and, what was the truth and what happened. So I always loved that. And so that's what drew me to law school was just the whole, really the criminal law aspect of it. And so going back to, kind of falling into the family law, I ended up, once I got pregnant, I was really sick. I had a really tough pregnancy. So I was home in bed, very sick. And so I used to watch court TV and I also used to read true crime books. And so I'm like, well, for writing, I'm like, well, I could write this. Or I would look at one of the cases on court TV and I would be like, that is just such an interesting issue. Like if you could just expand just on that one topic. So that's kind of how I got into the writing. And then when I did come back to law, I ended up opening my own practice doing post-conviction criminal law. And so basically what I did is I helped individuals who had made mistakes and needed to clean up their criminal record to be able to get jobs and housing and just basically to start again. And so that's what I was doing. And then I also started going to murder trials and writing stories about the cases.
And Aleida, along the way, did you also study abroad on a few occasions?
I did. Yes, I was very fortunate. When I was in college, I went to London and I lived with an English family in Ealing, which is outside of London. So my best friend from high school and I had heard when we were in high school of our friend that was going to Germany. She was already a couple of years ahead of us. And we thought we'd never been anywhere really. And so we're like, I'd been to Bolivia, but I hadn't traveled. And so to hear all these glamorous stories that she would talk about, oh, we did a trip to Italy after, from Germany. And so we actually worked as a waitress and did all kinds of stuff, saving all our money. And we went on this study abroad program to England, which was fabulous. We loved it. And then when I was in law school, they offered a summer program where you go to the University of Paris and study international law, public international law, all kinds of different programs. So of course, everybody wanted to go, right?
Oh, for sure.
We almost didn't care what the course was. We just wanted to go. So I did go to that, and the school provided you could take student loans and stuff. So you could take a loan and take a loan and go to Paris. Who wouldn't want to do that? So that's what I did.
So to kind of bring all of that together, the work that you do now, Aleida, what would you say is your mission, and how did your early life shape that mission?
Well, my mission right now through this true crime writing and going to these different trials, I mostly go to murder trials, but I have gone to other maybe like sexual assault cases, rape cases. But my mission is to find out in these cases, is there a lesson that we can learn? Or can we do better? Somehow, have we failed as a society? For instance, there was this one case where this mother who had some mental illness, she ended up killing her husband and her daughter. So a 14-year-old daughter is now dead. And so did we fail that child? Could there have been intervention to help this mother before it got to that point? And so I think that in each of these cases that I cover, they have specific there's issues in there that society needs to address, things that maybe we can do better, or even law that we can change. And so my background from having been adopted really out of poverty and given a second chance, I do believe that we can, in a sense, give a second chance through these cases in a way, because it's something so horrible that happened, but can something come out of that to help our society so it doesn't repeat?
That's a great opportunity for me to kind of segue from that, have you build it out. Was there an event that kind of kicked you off from practicing law to writing and doing legal commentary and then pursuing true crime?
No, I don't know if there was a specific event. I think that when I was homesick because, I had that difficult pregnancy, I really got into reading the true crime, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. By writing, you can reach such a wide audience. If you write a book, like, I was reading Ann Rule, and I don't know if you read her book, but the one that she wrote about Ted Bundy.
Right. Yeah, we're familiar with it.
Yes. So, millions of people have read it. You can touch millions of people through your writing. So I think that was one of the reasons that I got into it. But I still love law. I love the legal issues. And I find it, and that's one of the reasons why I do like going to the trials and doing the commentary, because you can explain complicated legal issues to a non-lawyer and tell them what happened in this case, or talk about what the jury instructions were, or what the law says about whether you can bring this evidence in or not. So I think that's it's still using your law degree, but you don't have to be that person actually in that courtroom litigating the case.
So let me ask you this then, Aleida. Of all the hats that you've now worn in the legal field and in the media, which one of those would you say that you have enjoyed the most?
You know what? I can't really pick one thing, because I know when I worked in with the law cases, when I was doing, like, for instance, the family law, there were people that were really hurting because there was sometimes very heavily contested child support cases, or not child support, I'm sorry, child custody. And that is one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issues for families, is your child. So I think that I was able to help people. And I know at one time I went into the courtroom, and this one client said, "Oh, when you got here, I felt like it would be okay because I've kind of like held his hand for all this time. You're here now." And so I think that you were able to help these people who need that help, just like a doctor helps someone that's sick,
right,
that needs to be healed. And so, but I must say the media is exciting. I mean, there's times like when I've been at a court hearing, and there'll be, or I mean, a court case, and they'll be like, "Oh, the verdict's in." And then you just see everybody scrambling every which way. And it's just, it does get exciting. And when I was working, when I was on court TV for the Kellen Winslow rape trial, and the ex-NFL star that was accused of all these multiple rapes. And it's exciting. I mean, you pull into the court parking lot and you see all these media trucks and the satellite trucks, and you've got people bringing in pizza. And you've got people taping down cords, and people are scurrying every which direction. So that's exciting.
I have to keep thanking you, keep setting me up for my questions. And so my next question is, on that high profile case that you covered and wrote a book about on the judging Winslow Jr. from NFL star to serial rapist. What was it like being in court every day for that case?
This was really, it was just really amazing and intense and interesting. And like the first day of trial, it was like San Diego's OJ. It was like when I got to court and I saw one of my friends, he's a reporter, and he's like, yes, I've been here since 4 a.m. I was reporting early on the news, and we got there. I mean, they had Court TV, the Law and Crime Trial Network. You had every local reporter, NBC, ABC. They flew out people from Sports Illustrated from the East Coast. You had USA Today. You had everybody that you could possibly imagine. Everybody waiting to get into that courtroom. And once we got in there, and then you had Kellen Winslow, and it's the first day of the trial, and his dad, who was, the NFL superstar, who's in the Hall of Fame, and he's impossibly tall. He's like, I don't know, 6'5" or 8. I mean, he's so always perfectly attired, and he comes in and he's bringing Kellen's suit, and Kellen's putting the suit on, and not in front of us, but he's getting dressed, and you just have just all these different facets of it, because you have Kellen Winslow's dad, who really was there for every minute for his son. And you could see the pain that he was in, because this is his beloved son. His son's on trial for these horrible charges of raping women, 3 women, and doing all these sex crimes to all these elderly women. It's like, but yet he was there. As soon as Kellen would walk into that courtroom, he would look to his father, and his father always would give him that really big smile and, just, I'm here for you. So that was an amazing case. It really was. And it had a lot of different legal issues. And you had all 5 women, Jane Doe's 1 through 5, every single woman testified. And so that in itself had there's a lot of emotion and a lot of drama.
So I wanted to ask you about one specific moment in that case.
Sure.
And so Winslow was sitting next to his attorney, Brian Watkins.
Yes.
And I guess one of the defense attorneys asked the Jane Doe to identify her attacker, and she actually identified Brian Watkins. Were you actually in the courtroom when that happened?
I was not there. That wasn't actually at the trial. That was at a prior hearing.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, but it was. They did address that. I did see some of the news articles on that, and they did raise that as a question. Mark Carlos, who did the cross-examination to the women, asked her. He said to her, "You identified Brian Watkins as the attorney, as defendant," and he really called her on that. So it was that was a big moment, because you have this issue here of identity. You're saying the attorney did it. So that was a big moment, and Mark Carlos did a fabulous job in that trial of this cross-examinations. He was brought in specifically to do that, and he was just incredible.
Well, you already brought up the OJ comparison, so I wanted to ask you, given that Winslow and OJ were both NFL players, both accused of very serious crimes. Aleida, did you see parallels between the trials, or were there just a lot of stark differences between these two trials?
Well, I think that, with the OJ case, of course, it was so horrible because you have these 2 deaths of these Nicole and Ron being really butchered. I mean, it just horrible, horrible facts. And with the Winslow case, you had the rape. There was very graphic testimony. So I think that's just by the nature of the crimes, they were very different. And when you have women that are on the witness stand having to describe in detail to a packed courthouse, to the media, of what happened to them. And they actually even showed these women's private parts, like you would if you'd be at the gynecologist's office. So, you don't even get that graphic at the gynecologist. So I think that it's hard to compare the two because of the 2 different aspects. You've got the murder. And of course, OJ was so famous, right? And he had that long history with Nicole and all the different domestic violence incidents. It was just, I mean, with that, and it had just so much riveting facts with Kellen and just the dogs and just everything. So it wasn't as, I can't say it was as dramatic in the Winslow case, but it was still very serious, because when you heard these 5 women testify, you heard how, I mean, this meant everything to them. This was a case that had, in some aspects, destroyed their life.
Right. And let's move on to your other, really a case that you were really involved with and covered. And you recently posted an article on your website entitled "Deadly Obsession and a Restraining Order Denied, the Jesse Alvarez Case."
Yes.
Before we dive into Alvarez, can you tell our listeners about the restraining order process and what concerns have been raised about? When I'm part of our research for interviewing you, it was tough to read that part of the document about the restraining order process.
That she came to the court, you mean, and asked for help, and she didn't receive it.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want me to just go into what she was raised?
I think we were going to ask you, Aleida, just in general, before we get into Alvarez specifically, if you could educate our listeners about the restraining order process and what some of the faults are in it.
Okay. So under the restraining order here, it was a domestic violence restraining order. So you have to have a special relationship. You're either married, or you've been in some type, you have a child together, or you have, you've dated. And there has to be some, you have to come before the court with this proof that abuse has occurred within the meaning of the Domestic Violence Act. And under that act, it's a wide definition. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be physical harm or threats of harm, but it can also be harassment, following, stalking, disturbing your peace. So it's a wide variety of abuse that you can say that has happened, and it has to be recent. So you file the documents, and you file what they call a declaration. It's basically, there's a judicial counsel form that you have to fill out, which is, you go through the different questions that they ask. Does this person have a gun? What are you asking for them to be removed from your house? All kinds of questions like that. And then you write your declaration, basically your testimony to the court of what happened. This is why I need this restraining order. These are the incidences, and you put it out very specifically. And then you sign that under the penalty of perjury. And then that's filed with the court, and the court will read it. And a lot of times they will grant this temporary restraining order. And then, but that's only for 21 days. And they have to set a hearing so that the other party they have to be served with the documents. And so that the other party has the opportunity now to come before the judge and present their side. And before the hearing, they file their paperwork, and you come before the court for that permanent restraining order. And you tell the court, each side tells the court, the one side says, I need the restraining order because these are the acts of abuse and I'm in fear for my life, or whatever it is that they are setting forth. And then you have the respondent who says, no, this is my side. And, usually it's a lot of times, no, I didn't do that, or I did do it, but here's why. And it's not threatening. It was more innocuous. And let me tell you why. And then the judge will make a determination. And under that, the standard that they have to prove, it's the burden of proof, is preponderance of the evidence. And that means basically that it's more likely than not that abuse has occurred. So the petitioner has to prove basically that 51% of the evidence is in their favor. And that's what did not happen here in the Jesse Alvarez case.
Do you know if he had help, if Jesse Alvarez had help preparing his rebuttal doc?
I don't believe he did, because his long declaration was 13 pages. It was single spaced in the smallest possible font. You almost need a microscope to read it. What is it? Not microscope. What's the right word? But anyway, so it's just so small. You can barely read it. And it's 13 pages. So, I mean, it took me a really long time to read through all that. And he just wrote and wrote and wrote. So there's no legal words and stuff in there. It's just stuff that he's writing. So I don't believe he had any help on that.
I was just impressed at how he went point for point, though, in his doc, his declaration, how he was just everything that she brought up. He had a point, that made it seem like it was really innocuous.
Yes. So that was the whole thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why the judge did not grant that restraining order, is because he went through everything and said, no, I didn't do that. Or if I did do it, this is why. And it's not so bad as she's making it. And, we can go into the specifics of what she said and then what he said. But no, I don't think that he had legal help. I think when he got those documents, when you read his response, what comes through is just, you can feel that anger and you can feel the betrayal in that. And I think one of the biggest things, the reasons why he was so angry, is because he's saying that, we dated, he says 4 years, she says 3.5. And he says that she had this hard push for marriage, basically from the get-go. Within 2 months, she wants me to marry her. She's sending me pictures of her ring that she wants. She's making this vision board entitled Our Dream Wedding, with gorgeous photos of a wedding and honeymoon. She signs us up for this marriage conference and pre-marriage classes at our church. And I did all of this. I did everything she wanted. And then you know what she does after I did all this? She dumps me. So you can feel that anger. And then he's also upset because he feels like he helped her and her family, and I quote, through a plethora of problems and crises. And he's just done everything, including her father's suicide. He's been there for every minute, thick and thin. And this is how she repays him, by dumping him and then coming to the court with this restraining order and just making lie upon lie and betraying him in that manner.
So now that we have Alvarez's story, let's go back to the beginning, Aleida. And if you don't mind, can you kind of tell the story, lay out the basic facts and some of the twists and turns in the saga that made it so compelling?
Sure. So, this really is a case that shattered the San Diego community. It's a stalking case that is turned into murder. And Jesse Alvarez now, he's 30 years old. He's charged with killing his ex-girlfriend's fiance just 4 months ago, so February 1st of 2021. And I have to state, though, that Jesse Alvarez has pled not guilty, and his case is currently in the court. So his stance is, I am not guilty. I did not do this. But this is a shocking case, because if these facts are true, and Jesse Alvarez actually did this, when he chose not to kill his ex-girlfriend, who he's so angry with and obsessed with, but instead he kills the new man, the man that she now loves. And this man, his name is Mario Fierro. He's 37 years old and was by all accounts an angel on this earth, really like the best of humanity, a coach, a teacher and a football coach at Cathedral Catholic High School. And he really loved his students. And on the night of his death, one of his students told the cameras with tears coming down his face that, Coach Fierro, he believed in me when no one else believed in me. And another student at the memorial service said that I graduated from high school, I went off to college, but when I had problems, I could still call Coach Fierro because I knew that he cared about me. When I was having a hard time, I could still reach out to him and he would listen to me. And so at the end of his memorial service, the students sang that song, Lean on Me, and I think that was just, if you could think about this person, what a blessing he was to people. And that was that, lean on me when you're not strong and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. He was really the best of humanity. And he is gunned down. So basically on February 1st of 2021, the prosecution says that Jesse Alvarez rose before dawn. He dressed in all black and he drove to wait silently outside the fiance's home in North Park, which is over kind of by the San Diego Zoo. And he just waited for him for over an hour till 7 a.m. when Mario Fierro came out on his way to work, on his way to go to teach high school. And it's alleged that Jesse Alvarez opened fire, killing him multiple times. And the prosecution calls it an execution, that he just executed him there. And so people heard the gunshots and called 911. Some witnesses described a suspect in the car he was driving, and police officers got to the scene and they tried to perform CPR until the paramedics got there. But Mario, he ended up dying on that sidewalk. So, I mean, this was just something that like just shattered the San Diego community and the people that really, really loved this man. So Alvarez was arrested that night at his home. And police had also looked at images from home security cameras, and he was arrested, and they found a second gun at his house, a semi-automatic rifle that was inside a rifle case that was made to look like a guitar case. And the prosecutor, said that he had also practiced shooting at a local gun range. So that's the background of the killing.
So clearly, this is, as you mentioned, this is a stalking case with the twist that the target wasn't killed, but that the target wasn't killed, but someone close to her was. So my first question is, why do you think that was? It was, since you've been following this, is there anything that, obviously, because that's not typically how a stalking case goes down. Why do you think he chose to kill someone that was close to her?
Well, that would be the ultimate revenge, right? Against your ex-girlfriend, to kill the person that you most love. Like, well, you're not going to marry him. I'm not going to let this happen. And like I said, from those documents that he filed, a lot of that anger was that the fact that she had pushed so hard, according to him, for this marriage, that she wanted to be married. And now she's going to marry someone else. How dare she? And so I think that was the ultimate revenge. You're not going to get married.
How prevalent do you think stalking really is?
Well, I haven't followed a lot of stalking cases. A lot of the murder cases that I've gone to haven't involved this. So I don't know the actual statistics and stuff, but it's I don't know. I think you probably would know more with your show, but yeah, I don't know the answer to that really.
I want to go back a little bit to before the homicide. Aleida, do we know how Alvarez and Jane Doe initially met?
Well, according to the reports, that they had met in Los Angeles. So I'll give you a little background. Jesse Alvarez actually was 30 years old at the time of the shooting, and he had never been in trouble before. He's highly educated. He was studying for a master's in international relations at the University of San Diego. He is a dual citizen from Peru and the United States. And he worked as a computer technician. He was the vice chair of the Graduate Law Student Council at University of San Diego. So he had all these things that he was doing. He was deeply religious, and his parents ran a missionary. So that's his background. Now, his ex-girlfriend, she was also very religious, and they apparently met in Los Angeles when she was doing an internship as a hospital chaplain. She had received a master's of divinity, and then was interning there in the neonatal unit. And so that's how they initially met. Through a lot of it, I think, was through their religious affiliations. They both were very, very committed to religion.
Well, Alvarez, it seemed like he was a very proficient stalker, and he used several methods and was very creative. Can you kind of break down some of the ways that he terrorized Jane Doe?
Yes. So basically what she says is that she decided that she was going to break up with him on September 1st of 2019. And that when she tried to break up with him, he threatened suicide, and that he started texting her stuff about how he was going to commit suicide. And that was a trigger for her because her father had committed suicide, and he knew how hard that had been for her. And so she feels like that was part of the emotional abuse, that he was actually saying some of the same words that her father had said in his text right before he committed suicide. So that was one aspect. And then going into the fact that he tried to break into her house. So she's seen his behavior. She told him, I don't want to be with you. in response, he gives her this 9-page single-spaced letter begging her to come back. He's threatening suicide. And she just feels his behavior is really erratic and unstable. So she ends up changing her locks on her door. She installs cameras at her house. But about 10 days after the breakup, he comes to the house. He's wearing sunglasses and a hood over his head, and he attempts to break into her home. And she believes he used a key that, and perhaps made a copy of the key, that she had. And so she's able to see this break-in when she reviews the surveillance video. And so she files a report with the police, although she doesn't file for a restraining order because she thought that maybe he would stop this type of behavior. But eventually he keeps trying to contact her. And so she eventually moves to a whole new residence. And then another time he starts trying to cyber stalk her, following her on different accounts. He uses his mother's phone to call her because now she's blocked his number. And he's trying to contact her in various means. And then in December, so almost 4 months after the breakup, she's at California Adventure with her sister. And he shows up and tries to follow her and tries to speak to her. And they try to call security, but they're able to get away. But then later in the day, they run into him again. And because she feels unsafe, she says she leaves the park. And then the final straw comes on December 27th when Jesse Alvarez comes to her house. Well, she doesn't live there anymore because she's now moved, but it's her former house. And he's there and he's looking through windows. He's knocking on the doors of several neighbors looking for her. And so it was at that point that she decided, I'm going to go to the court and ask for this restraining order.
Well, I don't know if you have an opinion on this, Aleida, but in your experience, is there any type of typical psychological makeup of an individual who becomes an extreme stalker like Alvarez did?
I don't know. I think that's more something that like a forensic psychologist would be able to address, or somebody in the mental health field. It just seems that he just had this fixation for whatever reason that he couldn't get beyond the fact that here she was begging him to marry her, and she wanted him so badly, and he was thinking about marrying her, but he was raising different issues that she had that it was keeping him from proposing. But here she is, he's thinking that they will eventually get married. And then boom, she dumps him. And was that rejection so bad that just ignited rage within him? Or was it something, does he already have this psychological makeup to make him more prone to do this type of behavior? And I'm sure the defense will have him have a psychological evaluation, and they will dive into his psyche and find out some of these answers.
Yeah, because when you were describing his background, it didn't sound like there were any obvious red flags, but just hearing about his behavior, like you were talking about the way he was very persuasive against the restraining order. And then I saw a clip about how he actually snuck onto the campus of the Catholic school and recorded a video. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, let me just go back real fast because
Sure.
when he files his 13-page response, basically he's saying she lied about everything, where he provides alternative explanations. So, for instance, for breaking into the house, he says that, well, she always entrusted me with the key, and I could come and go as I pleased. And so I already had a key to her house that she gave me. And when I went, I was only going to her house to drop off items that she asked for and to pick up my items. We're broken up. I'm getting my stuff. I'm giving her back her stuff. And that's it. That was basically his side. So there's nothing wrong here. I mean, besides the fact that she's told him, I don't want you to be here. And if you come near me, I'm going to call the police. I don't know why he thought he could go use this key to try to get into her house. But anyway, that's his explanation. I was simply dropping things off and getting my stuff. And then the second time he went to her apartment, he says it's because he was dropping off a check for her, that he owed her some money. They're wrapping up their affairs, and he's going to just slip this check underneath her door. So, and then with the Disneyland, he says, I was only there because we had these annual passes. It's the last day of our annual pass. And I had planned to go there. I was there with my parents. I wasn't following her. She knows that we both have these passes. And of course, I would use them because this is the last time I can. So that's his side. So then, and that's one of the reasons I think that Judge Belsky was able to say, well, I've heard both of you and you're both credible, but I'm going to go with Jesse Alvarez because I think that I'm going to believe that he's sincere and he's not going to do anything else. And he's raised these other explanations. But then going to the more disturbing behavior. So basically, the restraining order is denied. And he's promised under oath, Judge Belsky, I'm not going to bother her. I understand now. She doesn't want to see me. I won't have anybody contact her. And he believes them. So only 1 month, though, after the restraining order hearing, an investigation by NBC shows that he didn't do that. He actually went on campus to Cathedral Campus High School, where both his ex-girlfriend and Mario Fiora worked as teachers. And they had a flyer of his face with he's not to be here with the description. And so the principal of all people recognized him and said, you're not supposed to be here. He's escorted off campus by security. So then he tries again to come. And this time he pretends that he's working with a vendor who does business with the school. And again, he's escorted off campus. And then the final thing is only 1 week before the shooting, he appears in a video clip by the school's weekly news program, conducting himself as if he were a student at the school. So basically, this news program had put out this request that we want every students to tell us, what is your New Year's resolution for 2021? Tell us what it is. So here he is, Jesse Alvarez, 30 years old, who's not in high school, decides that, okay, I'm going to go ahead and film something and send that in. And he's pretending that he's actually a student there. And this is after he told Judge Belsky, I don't even live in San Diego anymore. As soon as she broke up with me, I moved 150 miles away to Rancho Cucamonga, the Inland Empire, and I'm not even in San Diego.
Yeah, I saw that video, and I mean, there he is with his big smile and talking about Jesus. And I mean, he's clearly very cunning.
Yes. So, and I think that was just that whole thing with the Cathedral Catholic going on the campus. The thing is, I don't think it doesn't appear that this Jane Doe, and that's what they're referring to her as in court, this ex-girlfriend, I don't think she knew about this, because if she did, she could have gone back to court and said, okay, Judge Belsky or whoever judge was going to hear the case, he promised he wasn't going to contact me. He promised he understood the errors of his ways, so to speak, and he was done. But no, instead, look what he's done. And he doesn't even live here. So why is he on this campus?
There was no fear in his stalking game. I mean, there was nothing that he wouldn't try. I mean, that is really brazen stuff to go into a high school. Yes.
And that's the whole thing, is that I know parents were upset about the fact that he was there, that, this is after the murder. They're upset that should the school have called the police? Should there have been more done? That I think that was another inquiry as to, could we have stopped this?
Well, it definitely demonstrated the lengths that he would go to. So, yeah, I think everybody involved should be very concerned.
Yes.
Have you covered any celebrity stalking cases in your career?
I have not. No, I have not. But I've watched your show. So you have some incredible cases.
Thank you for the plug.
Yes.
Well, Aleida, it sounds like, in all of your time in the courtroom, you've certainly been on hand for a lot of forensic testimony. So I'm curious to get your take on what are some of the observations you've had of the actual jurors as they react to the testimony of forensic experts, both on the prosecution side and on the defense side.
Okay. You mean for just any case in general, or
any case in general? Just what's your basic observations of how jurors tend to react to forensic experts?
Well, I must say that sometimes the testimony is very complicated. It's long, it's sometimes tedious. So sometimes it looks like their eyes are glazing over sometimes, but
not when I testify, but other experts.
Or it gets so confusing because yes, no, of course not you. I'm sure everybody's riveted. Yes. So no, but I think that sometimes in the cases, it gets so confusing because you do have the defense expert, and then you have the prosecution experts, and they're both saying the opposite thing. And I think that's what gets confusing. So for instance, I'll give you, there was this one case, a horrible case, and an ex-Navy petty officer who's only in his 20s was drinking and had drove off the Coronado Bridge into Chicana Park, killing 4 people and seriously injuring 7 other people. So it's a horrible case. 4 people are dead. And so in that case, the big issue was he intoxicated at the time of the crash? And so they had to go back and look at the blood tests that they took at the hospital, blood tests that they later took, and try to do this extrapolation back in time to the time of the actual crash. And that got to be so complicated. That was like, I would say 5 days of testimony.
Oh, that's brutal. Wow.
And the thing is, all those numbers change. The calculations of whether that blood alcohol content, what it was, changed depending on the numbers you put into it. Well, what was the elimination rate? What was what did he consume? There's so many different numbers. And if you put whatever number you put in, when you put in a different one, it would make the final number different. So you came up with all these numbers, and which number was the jury supposed to believe?
You need an explanation of the explanation of the explanation.
Yes. So that was very complicated. But then other times, I think that it's very helpful because jurors want to know about the blood evidence. They want to know about what is more, I guess, that the scientific aspects of the case versus the testimony, because maybe the testimony, someone's lying, they have a reason to lie, versus a scientific evidence that's more definitive.
So tell us what's next for you, Aleida. Do you have any upcoming books or anything scheduled, any more media appearances?
So I live in Del Mar. So they have their own news channel. And so it's like a community type organization. And they tape a lot of the community, events, and also like the design review committees and the different things that are going on within the Del Mar city. But they also have this producers club where people can come, anybody is welcome. You don't have to have special credentials or degrees or anything. If you have a story you want to tell, you have something that moves you, whether that's for me, true crime, and talking about how we can change the world by new laws or bringing out an important issue, or it could be somebody else that loves to garden and they have these beautiful tomatoes and they need to tell you about how to grow these gorgeous tomatoes. So that's what I like about it. It's just that everybody can come, and if you have a story you want to tell, you can come, you can learn how to do it, you can learn how to do some of the cameras, you can go in front of the camera if that's what you want to do, and put together a showcase, and then it will be it'll be aired on the Del Mar channel. It can be live, and it's also there to watch at a later date.
Well, that's great. We'll have to check that out. And Aleida, we really enjoyed your conversation and the insight that you brought.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I love talking with you, and I'm honored that you asked me to come and talk with you.
Well, our listeners are definitely in for a treat, and they're going to enjoy this and get a lot out of it. So thank you so much for joining us on Crime Redefined, Aleida.
What a great personality coupled with an excellent legal insight. You can see why she's a natural on camera, Mehul.
Oh, no doubt about it. I'm really excited to see her future writings, her true crime writings on her website, and her media appearances. I hope to see more of her on TV.
Yeah, I'm really amazed at the Jesse Alvarez stalking case. It was really a chilling how Aleida laid out all the details of that case, and we really mean chilling.
Yeah, it was dark, and it was pretty crazy how his anger seemed to fuel this rebuttal that he wrote, and he made it into, I guess, what was a persuasive document in the eyes of the judge. And, as a defendant, if you're winning some sort of court hearing when the standard is only preponderance of the evidence, that's a rare feat. But I got to say, Dion, at the end of the day, do you really think that the restraining order would have made a difference and stopped Alvarez?
No, I don't think so. I think he was on a mission and he had a plan. And I think that if the judge would have granted it to her, Jane Doe, I think he would have blown right through that stop sign and he wouldn't even have, it would have been not even a speed bump for him.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this guy was focused and he was obsessed. So it was going down any which way.
Just to kind of, build on what you said about deploying everything. There was not a box that he did not check for every, point that she had.
Yeah.
He had a really strong rebuttal to every one. So I could actually see how the judge was convinced and decided in his favor.
Yeah. And, a different judge, a different day hearing the same evidence, there might have been a different outcome. I mean, this is just the variability of the justice system, which really kind of makes it fascinating to follow.
Yeah, he really deployed all the stalking techniques you can think of. I mean, he was basically a stalking all-star. If there's like a Hall of Fame for this kind of stuff, this guy is first ballot.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, I encourage you all to check out Aleida's site for more of these fascinating true crime stories. Her website's at aleidalaw.com. That's ALEIDALAW.com. And there you can see, more fascinating true crime articles, and as well as more of her media appearances. You can find her on social media on Facebook. Her handle's Attorney and Crime Writer. And she's got a YouTube page, Aleida K. Wahn, the true crime lawyer.
Yeah, her YouTube page is actually, it's really good. You can see, all of the current, little snippets from her appearances. So I really do recommend that. We want to say we deeply appreciate all of our listeners and social media followers. And we hope that you are enjoying and learning from Crime Redefined. As always, you can find all of our past episodes at crimeredefined.com. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Crime Redefined podcast. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Crime Redefined. Please send us your comments and questions and join us for the next episode.